Francesco Bagnaia's weekend started with real hope and ended with a hard dose of reality about how his 2025 MotoGP season is going. After finally securing his first pole position of the year at Brno, Pecco looked like he might be on the verge of a breakthrough. The two-time world champion had spent the entire season trying to get the unpredictable Ducati GP25 under control, and that Saturday lap gave fans a glimpse of the Pecco they remembered, confident, composed and fast. But as the weekend unfolded, so did any belief that he's still in the title hunt. Pecco didn't just miss the podium in both the sprint and the main race, he walked away from Brno with more than just lost points. What he carried home was a heavy dose of reality. For the first time, he openly admitted it. "We must be realists," he said, after coming in fourth on Sunday. "It's hard to think about fighting with Mark in these conditions." That wasn't just Pecco being humble. It was a clear, public acknowledgement that his championship hopes for 2025 are fading fast, and the issues he's been battling since round one, he's starting to believe they might not be fixable at all. To really grasp how big that statement was, you have to go back to Saturday. Nobody expected him to take pole, not even him, but with a flawless lap and the yellow flag freezing the timesheets, Pecco shot to the grid and beat out Marc Marquez for his first pole of the season. It looked like a possible turning point. Instead, it quickly turned into more of the same frustrations. During the sprint race, a software glitch gave Pecco a false warning about low front tyre pressure. Worried about getting penalised, he eased off the pace, only to learn later that the alert wasn't real. That hesitation dropped him down to 7th. Then, in the main race, after grabbing the whole shot into turn 1, he was overtaken within 3 laps by Marco Bezzecchi, Marc Marquez and Pedro Acosta. From that point on, Pecco kept pushing. He even closed the gap to Acosta late in the race, but the charge came too late. He ended up 4th off the podium again. It wasn't just a rough outing, it pointed to something deeper. In the first part of the race, I was struggling quite a lot with my feeling on braking on entry, Pecco told MotoGP.com, but then he realised that dialing back the traction control actually helped a bit, so he started reducing it, one step, then another, and by the end of the race, he was finally feeling more competitive. That kind of adjustment, made mid-race, showed guts. Manually tweaking the electronics to make up for mechanical issues isn't something you see often, and when a rider like Pecco starts turning off the safety systems just to get comfortable, it really says something. Pecco's frustration isn't new, but it's definitely getting louder. He's been open for months about how the GP25 has made him lose confidence under braking. And Brno, where strong downhill braking is key, just highlighted the issue again. This time, he didn't hold back. "I've always been strongest on the brakes, very hard to overtake me there. When someone tried, they'd usually go wide," he said. "Now I'm the worst. Everyone passes me." That's a shocking turn for a rider who built his success and 2 championships on late braking and confident trail entries. What used to be his strength is now his weak spot. Technically, the Ducati GP25 still has the braking performance, but for Pecco, the feel just isn't there. The rear of the bike isn't rotating the way he needs it to, and the confidence to slide it in on corner entry has disappeared. After testing the larger 355mm brake discs back in Aragon, Pecco has gone back to using the smaller ones, but this time with a new brake pump to mimic the larger disc feel. While it's helped with the lever response a bit, the core issues are still there. "It's still very tough," he said. "There's a lot of movement, a lot of locking, and it's hard to brake the way I want to." Last season, he was known for braking late and aggressively. This year, everything has to be controlled and straight. The rear end isn't doing its part to help slow the bike down. Worse yet, he's starting to lose hope that Ducati can solve the problem. "I don't think we will improve it," Pecco admitted. "Maybe in the test at the end of the year we'll understand a bit more, but for now we won't improve. Maybe we can just adapt." That's not just a technical problem, it's mental too. The more Pecco doubts the bike, the more he questions if he can even win with it. And to make things harder, his teammate is making it all look easy. Marc Marquez just walked away from Brno with his 5th consecutive Grand Prix and sprint double. He's now leading the championship by a massive 120 points over his brother Alex and by 168 over Pecco. And this dominance isn't coming from a superior machine. Ducati Corsa general manager Gigi Dall'Igna admitted after the race that their early advantage this season has faded. The others have really raised their heads, Gigi said. It feels like a moment to get back to work, not think about vacation. He pointed out that teams like KTM and Aprilia have made huge progress, partly thanks to development concessions that Ducati no longer has. He also acknowledged Ducati took a conservative approach to upgrades in 2025, which was somewhat expected as the grid began to balance out mid-season. But even with all that in play, one Ducati rider is still getting results: Marc Marquez. Only Marc was able to make a difference with our bike, Pecco admitted. I don't know why it was so difficult to ride the GP25 here, and only he managed to stand out, especially in the left-hand corners. I tried to make the difference in the right ones, but I couldn't. That's a tough pill to swallow for any factory rider, especially one who's supposed to be leading the team. Right now, Pecco's not just trailing Marc in the standings, he's behind him in confidence, in adaptability and in outright speed. Even with the points gap and all the technical headaches, Gigi Dall'Igna still stood by Pecco. He was unlucky because of us, Gigi said, referring to the false tyre pressure alert that hit during the sprint. A great sprint yesterday and a great race today. This was probably his best weekend so far. It might sound generous given the final result, but there's some truth in that take. Pecco was the only Ducati rider besides Marc to even crack the top 10 in the main race. He set the 3rd fastest lap of the Grand Prix and kept fighting all the way to the end. According to Gigi, he only had 3 or 4 laps in the first part of the race where the pace dropped, but then he brought it back. That's a clear sign he's improving. It's a bit of a mixed message. There's the encouragement about Pecco's progress, but also a clear signal that Ducati as a whole needs to step it up. So far, it's been a very positive season, but the advantage we had has slowly faded, Gigi admitted. Now's the time to start finding better answers than what we've got. He also cleared up the confusion around the sprint issue, explaining it was a software initialization problem that triggered a dashboard error. Basically, a malfunction in an anti-panic system. It was a one-off, but it added another frustrating chapter to Pecco's season. And the guy who kept him off the podium at Brno, Pedro Acosta. The rookie's rise has been steady all season, but Brno felt like a turning point. He finished 2nd in the sprint, 3rd in the Grand Prix, and made it clear he's no longer just a promising talent. He's a threat. Even Acosta acknowledged how close Pecco came in the final laps. I was giving it 100%. When I saw Pecco closing in at 0.6 seconds, I started pushing again and gave everything I had, he said. If I couldn't hold him off, I wanted to be sure I gave it my all. That was a key moment. Pecco was finally going on the attack, but Acosta dug deep and held firm, something Pecco might have done himself just a year ago. Pedro Acosta is now up to 7th in the championship standings, sitting just behind the VR46 duo, and he's quietly turning into a serious contender for the top 5. While his KTM still struggles when riding in dirty air behind other bikes, his raw pace and smart decision-making late in races continue to stand out. On the other hand, Pecco is starting to look over his shoulder in the rankings. His new benchmark isn't Marc Marquez anymore, it's Alex Marquez. We need to reset and focus on doing our best with Alex as the reference point, Pecco said after Brno. Clearly, our approach to the season has changed after so many races. That's just how it is now. He's no longer chasing the title, he's trying to stay in the fight for 2nd. At the halfway mark of the 2025 season, Pecco Bagnaia is 3rd in the standings. He's got 1 win, 1 pole position and a stretch of solid but unremarkable results. But those numbers don't really capture what's happening. This is a rider and a champion caught in a full-blown crisis, technically, mentally and competitively. If I had to rate my season so far, I'd give it a 6 out of 10, he said. And if I include last year, maybe a 5. Now compare that to Marc Marquez, who's averaging 31.75 points per round. Pecco, just 17.75. The gap is massive. And with Austria up next, a track where Pecco's historically performed well, you'd expect confidence. But even he sounds uncertain. Austria's the next race, and I've usually been able to make a difference there, he said. We'll see what happens. But it's not just Austria that's in question, it's the entire second half of 2025 and maybe more. Can Ducati adjust the GP25 to suit Pecco again? Can he regain that braking magic that once made him nearly impossible to pass? Or has the character of this bike simply drifted too far from what he needs? Right now, Pecco Bagnaia has never looked more vulnerable, and with Marc Marquez looking more unstoppable by the race, that's a scary reality for anyone still holding on to hopes of a title challenge. The 2025 MotoGP season has already given fans plenty of unforgettable moments. But what happened during the Brno sprint race took things to an entirely new level. It was more than just a race. It turned into a tense showdown where strategy, tech, and rulebooks collided. Marc Marquez may have claimed his 11th sprint win of the year, but what almost happened could have changed everything. This wasn't just another victory lap, it was a clear example of how MotoGP today is a game of fine margins, where tiny differences in timing or tyre pressure can make or break champions. Let's start with what fans actually saw. Marquez overtook Francesco Bagnaia at turn 3, triggering what seemed like a smooth Ducati 1-2, but by lap 6, things started to go sideways. First, Pecco slowed down, then a lap later, so did Marquez. Both willingly dropped positions, and no, it wasn't a bad call. It was damage control in response to one of MotoGP's most controversial rules. The rule? Riders need to keep their front tyre pressure above 1.8 bar for at least 60% of the race. If not, they risk a heavy time penalty. 8 seconds in a sprint race, 16 in a full-length one. Marquez came dangerously close to falling into that trap. Pecco was the first to get the warning on his dash that his front pressure had dropped too low, so he let Pedro Acosta pass, hoping that riding in his slipstream would heat up the Michelin front tyre. But things quickly went off the rails. "I was just trying to manage it," Pecco said afterward, clearly worn out and frustrated. "Even after trying to put more load on the front, the pressure wouldn't rise. I completely messed it up." His problems didn't stop there. He got tagged by Enea Bastianini and then passed by Fabio Quartararo. Pecco tried to recover but never managed to regain pace, eventually finishing in 7th. He looked crushed, convinced a time penalty was coming. But none came. So what happened? Turns out Ducati's own dashboard had misled him. "When I got back to the garage and saw the data, I realized I was never actually under the limit," he said, still trying to process it. "From lap 2 on, I was fine. So yeah, it was a dashboard issue." It wasn't a mistake on Pecco's part, it was an electronic glitch before the race even began, and that made the whole thing sting even more. Right before the race began, Ducati had been scrambling to make last-minute changes to Pecco's dashboard. Somewhere in that rush, something went wrong with the setup, leading to a corrupted configuration. That glitch sent out a false warning, one that convinced Pecco to throw away his own race. "Normally, I wouldn't have let anyone pass," he said. "My pressure was actually fine, but the bike was telling me it wasn't, so I reacted. Just really unlucky." While Pecco's plan fell apart, Marc Marquez stayed calm under pressure. But don't take that calmness to mean he wasn't in trouble too. He was in the same risky situation. "I felt good on the bike," Marquez explained, "but then I saw the pressure was dropping. I tried pushing hard on the brakes for a few laps to build it back up, but it was getting too risky." So he tucked in behind Acosta, sat there for several laps and waited for the tyre to warm up. Once the dashboard confirmed he was back in the safe zone, he made his move, passing Pedro on the second to last lap and cruising to another win. But during the post-race interviews, things took a turn. When he was asked if he stayed within the pressure limit, Marc nodded and smiled. Then he was told he was under investigation. The funny thing is, he said, when you asked me in part ferme, I didn't even know. Now they tell me I was being looked at, but I was sure. My dashboard showed I was fine. What came next was a surprise twist. MotoGP stewards put out a bulletin saying Marquez, along with A. Ogura and Alex Rins, had been flagged by mistake. Turns out the tyre pressure monitoring system used by Race Direction had a calibration issue. The team's readings were right. The official system wasn't. MotoGP later explained the post-race check on riders 93, number 42 and 79 found that Race Direction's warning system had an incorrect minimum pressure setting. Because of that, no further action or investigation is needed. All three riders were within the proper range. This isn't the first time Marquez has used this kind of sharp race awareness. Earlier this season in Buriram, he let his brother Alex pass him mid-race to bring his own tyre pressure back up. Then once it was legal again, he retook the lead. I saw the pressure improving behind Acosta, just like it did in Buriram, he said. So I waited again. This is racing. Engineers always try to work right up to the edge of the rules to squeeze out performance. This time, that edge came with complications. The resurfaced track in Brno, with its unusually high grip levels, threw off everyone's expectations. With no dry track time on Friday, teams had little data to work from. As it turned out, the rear tyres were gripping so well that it became nearly impossible to generate enough force on the front. That left riders across the grid skating close to the pressure minimums all weekend. With this win, Marquez stretched his championship lead to 95 points over his brother Alex, who entered the race in 17th, and 156 points ahead of Pecco. It marked Marquez's 11th sprint victory of the season, with Silverstone being the only one that slipped away. For Pecco, the Brno sprint added yet another frustrating episode to a season filled with avoidable mistakes, bad luck, and chances that just haven't gone his way. Still, he did his best to stay positive. It sounds odd, but I'm actually kind of happy about today, Pecco admitted. For the first time I was able to fight for pole. I did it. Marc went down while he was 2/10 quicker, but I still got pole. And the upside, I was right behind him. I started to understand more things. That mattered. Pecco knows exactly what he's up against. Right now, he's incredibly smooth, he said about Marquez. I tried to stay with him, but once the problem started, I lost focus. While the spotlight stayed on the tyre controversy, Pedro Acosta quietly banged another sprint podium. The rookie from KTM stayed composed and confirmed afterward that he knew Marquez was going to come back. I expected Marc to take the lead again, he said. Bastianini made the most of the mid-race chaos, fighting his way to a solid podium finish. He even had to hold off a charging Marco Bezzecchi in the final laps, proof that his racing instincts are still sharp. But one of the most impressive rides of the day came from Fabio Quartararo. On a Yamaha that's clearly down on power, he managed to finish 5th, outrunning both factory Ducatis on pure pace. It was one of those performances that reminded everyone just how much talent he has, especially when things get unpredictable. I'd love to see him on a better Yamaha, one fan commented, and plenty agreed. Off the track, the tyre pressure rules stirred up heated debate. MotoGP legend Carl Fogarty didn't hold back on social media. This tyre pressure rule is a joke. Who cares what pressure you run? Marquez defended the rule by pointing to safety, but even he suggested the penalties might be too harsh. 8 seconds in a sprint, 16 in a GP, maybe that's over the top. Maybe just cut it in half, he suggested. He pointed out just how much pressure teams are under now, not just on the strategy side, but also with electronics, calibration, and keeping communication tight. For engineers, the easiest thing to do is just load up tyre pressure and let the rider complain, he said, but they're always aiming to give us the best possible performance. The tyre pressure rule was brought in for safety reasons, and on paper, it makes sense. Running too low of a pressure increases the chances of a tyre carcass failure, especially during heavy braking. But what played out in Brno showed how messy the rule can be when put into practice. Technical glitches, bad data, and misreadings can flip a race upside down, and not always in a fair way. What makes it worse is that riders don't even have access to the official race direction monitoring system. Teams rely on their own dashboards and alerts, but as Pecco's false warning showed, even those aren't foolproof. The rule is invisible, strict, and for many, just plain unfair.
There's some hope that things could improve when Michelin introduces its new 140mm front tyre in 2026, and with Pirelli stepping in by 2027, more changes are expected.
But until then, riders are stuck in a game of tyre pressure roulette. In a race that could have easily derailed his title run, Marquez didn't just make it through, he came out on top. He spotted the signs, stayed sharp, and executed his tyre pressure recovery plan so smoothly that most people didn't even notice it was happening. That's the difference. That's why he's still the guy to beat. As one insider put it, he's not just fast, he's smart under pressure. The tyre rule might have its flaws, but Marc Marquez showed once again that when it comes to race smarts, no one's ahead of him. And as long as he stays in this kind of form, the rest of the grid is going to keep feeling the heat